Today's psalm is the oldest of all the psalms. That's because it's written by Moses, hundreds of years before David and the other psalmists. And speaking of old, I don't know about you, but the older I get, the faster life seems to go. It's a little bit of the theme of what Moses picks up in today's psalm, in Psalm 90. Moses had a very difficult job if you know his life. He was called to lead God's people through many dangers, trials, grumblings and moanings. And Moses is reflecting on time after being with God's people. It's a typical time when they've sinned and rebelled. And he talks about life being so fleeting. And yet it's all compared to God. He talks about God right in verse 1 as being there from before time began. God is from everlasting to everlasting. And you almost have this contradiction that runs throughout the psalm. How on earth can we at the same time live and dwell with God, we who are so temporary and fleeting, with God who's permanent and everlasting and faithful? And yet we have this wonderful promise. After understanding of God's greatness, his sovereignty, being the creator, and yet how he's angry and will judge sin, we have this great promise and this great hope and cry that comes from Moses, where he says in verse 14, "Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love." Is that wonderful? He goes on and he gives the reason why. That we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. You see, this is his great hope. Despite the fact that life is fleeting, life sometimes seems to be flying, doesn't it? And when we reflect on who we are and compared to God, how unfaithful and how imperfect we are, it seems as though we're in big trouble compared to a spotless, almighty, all-creating God. And yet this is what we plead. We hand the future over into God's hands, pleading and trusting in the redemption that he's promised and sent through his son Jesus. So let's plead that, and let's rest in that, and let's enjoy and know that each day, being satisfied every morning with God's unfailing love.